Subscribe, like, and comment right now, because once this door closes behind you, the only way out is to keep watching. The sirens were already fading when the body was found. It lay half submerged in a drainage canal on the outskirts of the city, tangled in weeds and plastic bags, face down, wrists still marked red from metal restraints. Blue and red lights bounced off wet concrete as detectives sealed the area. Someone whispered, "He didn't even make it to trial." Someone else replied, "Or maybe he did." 20 minutes earlier, Marcus Hale had been running. He sprinted through a maze of alleyways, breath tearing at his chest, shoes slipping on rain-slick pavement. The city around him blurred into streaks of neon and shadow. Somewhere behind him, boots pounded and radios crackled with urgency. His name was already circulating through police channels, attached to words like armed, dangerous, suspect. Marcus wasn't thinking about guilt or innocence. He was thinking about the sound of the door being kicked in at 4:17 a.m., the flash of weapons, the way his hands were forced behind his back before he fully woke up. He was thinking about how fast a normal life could collapse. The chase ended when he tripped. A hand grabbed the collar of his jacket, slamming him face first into a brick wall. His cheek split open. Blood mixed with rain. "Don't move." Steel cuffs snapped shut around his wrists. In that moment, Marcus felt something colder than fear. He felt finality. At booking, they took everything. His wallet, his phone, his belt, his shoelaces, his name. He became inmate 547392. The intake area smelled like disinfectant and old sweat. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything feel unreal, like a set built to imitate suffering. Men sat on metal benches, heads shaved, eyes hollow. Some stared straight ahead. Others watched Marcus with open calculation. An officer flipped through paperwork without looking up. "You know why you're here?" Marcus hesitated. "I want a lawyer." The officer smirked. "You'll get one. Eventually. Fingerprints. Mugshots. A medical exam that felt more like inventory than care. Questions fired at him rapid fire. Gang affiliation, mental health history, enemies. Each answer seemed to decide something invisible but important. Then came the holding cell. The door slammed shut with a sound Marcus would come to recognize as the loudest silence imaginable. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time already felt unreliable. A man in the corner rocked back and forth, muttering. Another paced like a caged animal. Marcus leaned against the wall, replaying the last 48 hours in his mind. The victim had been a corrections officer. That detail changed everything. By morning, Marcus was transported to county jail. The building loomed like a concrete cliff, windows narrow and high, designed to let light in but hope out. Inside, the air felt heavier, like the walls themselves were listening. This was where the system began to work on you. Classification officers studied him like a puzzle. His charges, armed robbery, assault, suspected involvement in a custodial death, put him on a fast track. Maximum security. No bail. "You got enemies?" one officer asked casually. "I don't know," Marcus replied. "You will." His cellmate introduced himself as Leon. Late 40s. Deep lines in his face. Calm in a way that suggested experience. "First time?" Leon asked. Marcus nodded. Leon gave a humorless smile. "Then listen. Intake is the loudest part. After that, it's the quiet that gets you." Days blurred into routine. Counts. Meals. Lockdowns. The noise never stopped. Metal doors, shouted orders, distant arguments. But none of it felt human. It was all mechanical. Marcus learned quickly who to avoid and who watched him too closely. He learned how favors worked, how information moved faster than guards. He learned that the officer who died had been involved in something dirty, and that more than one person wanted the truth buried. Then the investigator came. Detective Claire Whitman didn't look like what Marcus expected. No scowl, no intimidation tactics, just tired eyes and a folder thick with documents. "Marcus Hale," she said, sitting across from him in the interview room. "I don't think you killed Officer Reynolds." Marcus stared at her, stunned. "Then why am I here?" he asked. "Because you were convenient," Claire replied. "And because once someone enters the system, it's very hard to pull them back out." She slid a photo across the table. It showed Reynolds alive, laughing with two other men. One of them wore a suit. "That man," Claire said, "runs private prison contracts." The pieces didn't fit yet, but Marcus felt the shape of something dangerous forming. Before he could ask more, the door opened. Time's up, a guard said. Claire stood. Be careful, she whispered. Intake is just the beginning. 2 weeks later, Marcus was transferred. The bus ride was silent. Chains rattled with every bump. The men aboard avoided eye contact. They all knew where they were going. State prison. The gates opened slowly, deliberately, like a mouth deciding whether to swallow. Intake happened again, but colder this time. Faster. More efficient. This was where people disappeared into routines so strict they replaced thought. Marcus was assigned to general population, but it didn't feel general. It felt segmented, territorial. Violence was always one bad look away. Guards watched without intervening unless absolutely necessary. Leon hadn't made the transfer. Instead, Marcus met Aaron Pike, a quiet man with inked arms and a reputation for knowing things. You're the one tied to Reynolds, Aaron said one night, voice low. That's dangerous knowledge. I didn't do it, Marcus replied. Aaron shrugged. Truth doesn't matter much in here. Only leverage. The days grew heavier. Claire stopped visiting. Rumors spread that the case was being fast-tracked to trial. Marcus felt the walls closing in, not physically, but procedurally. Then a fight broke out on the yard. Marcus wasn't involved, but he was close enough. Too close. That night, he was pulled from his cell and escorted to segregation. Temporary, the guard said. The door slammed. Solitary confinement stripped away what little rhythm remained. No voices. No yard. Just a slot for food and a light that never went off. Marcus tried to stay sharp, reciting memories, replaying conversations, counting breaths. On the 7th day, a man screamed in a nearby cell. On the 9th, the screaming stopped. On the 10th, Marcus received a visitor. Not Claire. The man wore a suit too clean for this place. He smiled like someone used to being obeyed. You're in the wrong story, Marcus, the man said. But stories can be edited. What do you want? Marcus asked. A confession, the man replied calmly. Not the truth. Just something that closes the book. And if I don't? The man leaned closer. Then your journey through this system will be thorough. That night, Marcus understood something with chilling clarity. Intake wasn't about processing people. It was about testing how much pressure they could take before they broke. And somewhere deep inside the prison, behind locked doors and sealed files, the system was already deciding whether Marcus Hale would ever make it to release. But when they opened the sealed transfer order the next morning, one line stood out, circled in red. Federal custody, effective immediately. And nothing about it made sense. Federal custody did not arrive with explanations. It arrived with chains that were tighter, quieter, and unmistakably final. Marcus was moved before dawn. No goodbyes, no paperwork he could read, no chance to ask questions. 2 marshals escorted him through corridors he'd never seen, past doors marked with codes instead of names. The air changed as they descended. Cooler, filtered, stripped of the familiar stink of sweat and bleach. This part of the prison didn't hum. It whispered. The transport van was unmarked. The windows were blacked out. The ride lasted hours, or maybe longer. Marcus tried to track turns, to count time between stops, but the road smoothed into a single, endless vibration. When the van finally stopped, the doors opened onto a facility that looked less like a prison and more like an office park. Low buildings, manicured gravel, nothing that screamed danger. That was the point. Inside, the intake process began again, but this time it felt surgical. Blood draw, retina scan, psychological inventory. Questions designed to measure stress responses rather than gather facts. Do you experience intrusive thoughts? Do you feel detached from your identity? Do you believe systems are inherently just? Marcus answered carefully, sensing that the wrong word could land him in a deeper hole. He was assigned a number that wasn't sequential. He noticed that immediately. The classification officer, a woman with a clipped tone and a tablet that never left her hand, studied him without blinking. You're a special case, she said. That's not a compliment. What am I classified as? Marcus asked. She paused. Pending. Pending meant danger. Pending meant no one had decided what to do with him yet. His cell was smaller than county, but cleaner. No bars, just a solid door with a narrow window. The bed was bolted to the wall. The toilet flushed silently. There was a camera in the corner, not even pretending to be discreet. Marcus sat on the bed and waited. On his 2nd day, he met Agent Thomas Reeve. Reeve didn't carry himself like law enforcement. He wore no badge, no visible weapon. His suit was worn at the elbows, his tie loosened, as if he'd slept in it. Marcus Hale, Reeves said, taking the chair opposite him. You've been difficult to place. That's not my fault, Marcus replied. Reeves smiled faintly. It never is. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos Marcus had never seen. Officer Reynolds meeting with men in suits, exchanging envelopes, standing near unmarked trucks. Dates and times were meticulously noted. You stumbled into a supply chain, Reeves said. Private corrections. Federal contracts. Money that moves faster than oversight. So why frame me? Marcus asked. Reeve leaned back. You weren't framed. You were absorbed. The words settled heavy between them. You ran at the wrong moment, Reeve continued. You were seen. And once the system sees you, it has to account for you. Claire Whitman, Marcus said. She was investigating this. Reeves' expression changed, just enough to notice. She's been reassigned. To where? Somewhere quiet. Marcus felt a flash of anger. You're telling me this because? Because the system is deciding whether you're a liability or an asset, Reeves said calmly. And I need to know which way you'll bend. Before Marcus could answer, Reeves stood. Classification hearing tomorrow. Sleep if you can. The hearing wasn't a hearing at all. Marcus stood behind a glass wall while silhouettes spoke about him from the other side. Their voices were filtered, distorted, stripped of identity. He was discussed like a malfunctioning component. Psychological resilience, above average. Exposure risk, moderate. Public narrative containment, feasible. Placement recommendation, a pause. Conditional integration. The word integration followed Marcus back to his cell like a shadow. Over the next weeks, the facility revealed itself in layers. This wasn't a place meant to punish. It was a place meant to sort. Inmates were moved constantly, short stays, long stays, sudden disappearances. Some returned changed. Others didn't return at all. Marcus was placed in a unit with men who didn't fit obvious categories. Not violent lifers. Not petty criminals. They were accountants, engineers, former military contractors. Men who spoke softly and watched everything. His cellmate introduced himself as Noah Grant. First-time federal? Noah asked, folding his blanket with obsessive precision. Marcus nodded. Then remember this, Noah said quietly. Release starts the day you walk in. Or it never starts at all. Noah had been inside for 8 years without a conviction. They keep resetting my clock, he explained one night. New charges. New hearings. Always just enough to justify holding me. Why? Marcus asked. Noah tapped his temple. Because I remember things they'd rather forget. Marcus noticed the patterns. Certain inmates were given access to libraries, to workshops, to counseling sessions that felt more like interviews. Others were isolated, starved of stimulation until their conversations dissolved into whispers. Classification wasn't about security. It was about usefulness. One afternoon, Marcus was called to a room that looked like a classroom. A dozen men sat at desks, all wearing identical gray uniforms. At the front stood a man with military posture and a scar running down his cheek. Welcome, the man said. This is cognitive compliance. The sessions blurred ethics and psychology. They discussed loyalty, obedience, rationalization. Case studies that mirrored real events too closely to be hypothetical. What would you sacrifice for stability? The instructor asked. Marcus said nothing. After class, Noah leaned over. You're being tested, he murmured. They want to see if you'll internalize their logic. And if I don't? Noah didn't answer. The answer came a week later when an inmate named Calder was removed mid-session. He screamed as they dragged him out, clawing at the doorframe, begging to be put back with the others. No one ever saw Calder again. That night, Marcus found something slipped under his door. A folded note. Whitman wasn't reassigned. She was silenced. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The next day, Marcus was summoned again, this time to a medical wing. Dr. Elaine Porter waited inside, tablet in hand, smile practiced. You're adjusting well, she said. But adjustment can be deceptive. She asked him to describe his dreams, his fears, his sense of self. Do you feel more like a number than a person? She asked. Sometimes, Marcus admitted. She nodded, typing. That's progress. Toward what? He asked. She didn't answer. Later that evening, Noah whispered through the wall. They're moving you. Where? Marcus whispered back. Noah hesitated. There's a tier below this one. Not solitary. Not general population. People who go there either come back loyal, or not at all. What's it called? Marcus asked. Noah's voice dropped. Release prep. The irony was sharp enough to hurt. On the morning of the transfer, Marcus was allowed one personal item. He chose a notebook, a small act of resistance. The guard raised an eyebrow, but allowed it. The transport elevator descended longer than any he'd experienced. When it stopped, the doors opened onto a corridor lined with glass walls. Inside each room, inmates sat alone at desks, writing, reading, staring into nothing. A sign on the wall read, "Reintegration Pathway." The official greeted Marcus with a familiar smile. "Agent Reeve." The lights in the reintegration pathway room dimmed to a soft, unnatural glow, the kind meant to calm rather than illuminate. Marcus stared at the confession on the desk, the words swimming as if they'd been written underwater. Every paragraph was precise. Dates, locations, motives he'd never had. It read like a clean ending to a messy story, the kind institutions preferred. He stood and paced, the camera in the corner following him with a faint mechanical whir. The room smelled faintly of paper and ozone. He pressed his palm to the wall and felt a subtle vibration. Air circulating, systems breathing. Somewhere beyond this glass, people were watching his heart rate, his pupils, the minute tells of indecision. He set one on the desk beside the confession and took the chair opposite Marcus. "You don't have to rush," Reeves said. "The system has learned patience." Marcus didn't sit. "You want me to sign a lie?" Reeves' eyes flicked to the paper. "I want you to sign a conclusion." "And Claire?" Marcus asked. "Is she part of your conclusion?" Reeves sighed. Detective Whitman pushed past her lane. "She asked the wrong questions." "Is she alive?" Marcus said. Reeve hesitated. "Just long enough. She's no longer operational." The word landed like a verdict. Marcus felt something inside him harden. Not rage, not despair, but clarity. "You built this place to manufacture endings," Marcus said quietly. "But you forgot something." Reeve raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Endings leak." Reeve smiled thinly. "You're not as alone as you think." Marcus glanced at the camera. "That's not what I meant." He picked up the notebook he'd brought with him and flipped it open. The pages were filled, not with memories or pleas, but with patterns, times, names, a map of transfers and disappearances, a ledger of human movement that only someone trapped inside the system could compile. Reeves' smile vanished. "What is that?" "A draft," Marcus said. "For the truth." Reeves stood abruptly. "You don't understand the protections in place." "I understand leverage," Marcus replied. "And I understand that you don't disappear people anymore. You reassign them." Reeves stared at the notebook, then back at Marcus. "You're bluffing." Marcus tore a page free and slid it across the desk. "That's the courier schedule for your off-site data backups. You don't encrypt the physical manifests. You assume no one inside would ever see them." Reeves' jaw tightened. "Where did you get this?" "Classification," Marcus said. "You taught me to watch." For a long moment, the room hummed. Then Reeves sat back down, slower this time. "What do you want?" he asked. "Not what," Marcus said. "Who?" Reeve closed his eyes. "You don't get to bargain for ghosts." "I get to bargain for release," Marcus replied. "A real one." Reeve looked at the confession again, then at the camera. "You sign that, you walk out in 6 months. New name, new job. You'll never see the inside of a cell again. And if I don't?" Reeve's voice was soft. "Then the system keeps you until you forget why you didn't." Marcus considered the paper, considered the men he'd watched disappear. Noah Grant's quiet certainty. Calder's screams. The way the system shaped choices until surrender felt like reason. "I'll sign," Marcus said. Reeve exhaled. "Good." Marcus picked up the pen, hesitated, then added a line beneath the signature, small, almost invisible. Reeve didn't notice. The process accelerated after that. Marcus was moved from the pathway to a transitional unit designed to simulate normalcy. Windows that showed real daylight. Meals that tasted like food. Conversations with counselors who spoke in affirmations and metrics. "You're responding well," Dr. Porter said during their final session. "You've internalized accountability." Marcus nodded. He had internalized something else too. Timing. Noah was gone. His cell empty. His name removed from the roster. Marcus asked a guard and received a shrug. "Released," the guard said. The word echoed. 2 weeks later, Marcus was escorted to a small office near the perimeter. Civilian clothes waited on a chair. A man from records handed him a folder. "Your identity packet," the man said. "Use it carefully." Inside were documents that felt heavier than chains. A new name, a birth date shifted by months, a work history that ended conveniently. A life designed to leave no ripples. At the gate, Reeves stood waiting. You did the right thing, Reeves said. For yourself. Marcus met his gaze. We'll see. The gate opened. Air rushed in, cold, sharp, free. Marcus stepped across the threshold and felt the ground under his feet change texture. Gravel to asphalt. Inside to outside. The gate closed behind him. Release was quieter than he expected. No sirens. No ceremony. Just a long road and a bus ticket with a destination chosen for him. Months passed. Marcus learned the rhythms of a new city, a new job that required no questions. He paid rent. He nodded at neighbors. He slept without counting hours. Sometimes he even laughed. But at night, he opened the notebook he'd smuggled out. Thin now, pages missing. He waited. The first headline appeared on a Tuesday. Federal Review launched into classification irregularities. Marcus read it twice. Then again. The second came a week later. Whistleblower alleges coerced confessions in multi-state detention facilities. Names followed. Not his. Others. The system had redundancy, but it also had seams. Then his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Marcus, Claire Whitman said. His breath caught. Claire, I'm not supposed to exist, she said. Neither are you. Are you safe, he asked. Safer than before, she replied. Your draft worked. The line I added? Marcus said. I saw it, Claire said. A conditional clause. You hit a timestamp in plain sight. Marcus closed his eyes. They'll come. They already tried, Claire said. Too late. The investigation widened. Committees formed. Facilities were rebranded, budgets reallocated, apologies issued without names attached. Reeve vanished from public records. Dr. Porter resigned for personal reasons. Marcus watched it all from a distance, his name absent, his confession sealed and useless. One evening, he found a note slipped under his apartment door. No handwriting, just a printed message. The journey never ends. He looked down the hallway. Empty. Weeks later, he received an email from a private address. A single attachment. A familiar face stared back at him from the screen. Noah Grant. Alive. Older. Standing in front of a building with no markings. A caption beneath the image read, Phase 2. Marcus closed the laptop and stared at the window, watching the city lights flicker like distant signals. He understood then what release truly meant. You didn't leave the system. You learned how to move through it without being seen. And somewhere, behind clean doors and careful language, intake was happening again. Names becoming numbers, choices narrowing to signatures. Marcus picked up his phone and typed a message to Claire. Ready when you are. If this story stayed with you, you already know why. Subscribe, stay sharp, and don't look away, because the next journey starts the moment you think you're free.